This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English episode. Have not checked the episode again because I'm so excited about this episode I haven't had a chance to check because it's kind of becoming a bit of a new type of episode, which I am starting to quite like because in these episodes I actually do some actual research. Okay, recently I told you about the story of someone called Tony Wilson, who was a big name in the British music industry years ago. And today I'm going to tell you another story. Okay, and the reason I do this about someone famous, the reason I do this is because when I lived in Italy, I felt so integrated when I could talk to Italian people about someone who was famous on TV, a film, like an Italian film, because they would kind of look at me and say, oh, wow, you know about that. So this is why I do it. So if you ever talk to an English person, you can talk about these things and they will look at you and think, wow, you are so integrated. You know so much stuff, because the person I am going to tell you about today was super, super famous in the UK. However, I would be amazed if you know this name, because he was very famous on British TV in the kind of late 80s, 90s, because I thought there's no point in me telling you a story about Princess Diana. You know who she is. Maybe there are some things I could tell you about Princess Diana, but this would not be something totally, totally new. However, Princess Diana does come up in this story. So I have a really cool intro to do about this, okay? I did use ChatGPT for this intro, but then after this, we're just going back to the normal rock and roll style of me telling you about it. But hold on to your hats as I tell you this intro, because I wanted something to get your attention, because it is a really good story, okay? So here we go. Today I'm going to tell you about a British celebrity you've probably never heard of, but for years he was one of the most famous people in the country. So famous his name is still used for a British slang term to this very day. He was the king of Saturday night TV. Millions of people watched him every week. He made friends with Princess Diana, battled drug and alcohol problems, and also hid big secrets about his private life. And then one night, after a party at his house, something happened and he was never seen on TV again. What followed was scandal, media obsession, police investigations, and the complete destruction of one of the biggest careers on British television. This is the story of Michael Barrymore. Now, if that doesn't get you interested, I don't know what will. And yeah, it was a bit dramatic the way I read it, but everything is actually totally true that I read. Okay, so let's get to the story. So as mentioned, this man was a superstar in the 90s. And as mentioned, something happened in 2002, and almost overnight, he was never seen on TV again. Now, we are going to take a few clips today from a specific TV interview that I actually recently watched. This is why I thought of it, where Michael Barrymore was on TV for the first time in a very long time, getting interviewed by someone. Okay, now we talk about ITV here. This gets mentioned, okay, because you've got to think ITV was huge in the 90s. It was like the rival to BBC. Remember, in the UK, we only had 4 channels: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4. But ITV and BBC were the big competitors for that Saturday night TV. Okay, so here is Michael Barrymore being welcomed back onto TV for the first time in more or less 20 years.
Wow.
Michael Barrymore, you're back on primetime ITV.
Yeah, I know.
And you're getting an ovation like that.
When I got here today, and it just all came back, you know, it's just something I do, and like, you know.
You were the biggest star on British television.
Really?
Very few people in the history of British television have gone from such a height to such a fall so fast in the way that you did.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, I was not just making that up. He did literally go from being such a star to, let's say, nothing almost overnight. So now let's get into this story. So he had a difficult childhood. This is him in the same interview telling a very small story of something that happened to him in his childhood, something with his father.
I mean, you were 11 when he came home drunk one night and put a shotgun up to you and your mother.
Yeah. That was the most terrifying moment.
So, obviously, as he says, it was a terrifying moment being 11 years old and your father putting a shotgun to your head. And from what I understand from my research, that he didn't speak to his father anymore. And so he was born in the 50s, early 50s, Michael Barrymore. So when we're now moving into the 70s, he wanted to start his working career. And an interesting thing here is he decided to go into entertainment, okay? But it's not like now where you can just start an Instagram channel and, you know, do whatever you want to do there, entertain people and get famous. So he worked at Butlins. So here is some more culture for you as well, if you've never heard of Butlins, okay? So in the UK, it's like a budget seaside, a budget seaside resort where everything is included in one place. So you get accommodation, food, there are entertainment activities, and they are specifically for families. Now, you stay in a place known as like a chalet, okay? So let's call it a mini house, always near the sea, always probably terrible weather and the sea quite horrible. There would be swimming pools there, arcades. In the UK, if there's like a seaside town, we love arcades, playing games, 2p machines. If you've ever been to the seaside in the UK, you will see 2p machines, which I'm not really going to go into it, but I used to go to Butlins when I was a kid. These kind of holidays, I used to play on these machines, and in the evenings there would be entertainment and there would be people wearing red coats, okay? So Michael Barrymore was one of them, entertaining people. Now, I actually recently went on a holiday kind of like this, and I must admit these kind of entertainment things do make me cringe. However, what I quite like about this is that Barrymore earned his way to fame, not like now where anyone just kind of gets famous. He was good at what he did. He was good at entertaining people, and then he managed to get on to TV. So he was famous for a reason, because he was great with a live audience, always making jokes, always reacting to things that people said. Now, he was, as mentioned, massive on Saturday night TV, especially in the 90s, late 80s, which obviously I can't remember, but in the 90s, absolutely massive. He was married, he was living the life, he was ridiculously famous in the UK, because as mentioned, there were only 4 channels. So Saturday night TV was real like family shows, okay? Now, in the mid-90s, I was like 10, 11. So I used to watch these Saturday night TV shows with my family, because obviously I was too young to be going to the pub or anything like that. So I would be in and I would be watching TV. And Barrymore was on ITV. And as mentioned, he was very good with a live audience and had shows like this. From my research, I found a clip of him opening a woman's bag from the audience and going through it. I mean, I think you'd probably be arrested for doing that now. But he also had a show called Kids Say the Funniest Things, where basically he spoke to kids and the kids said stupid things. He would always ask them to start with, what does your mum do? Or what does your dad do? So I'm going to play a clip of this, okay? And you will see how a child kind of misinterprets that question. And we will just play it along. And then I will tell you what happens at the end anyway, because there is lots of audience laughing, but do your best to try and understand this.
What's your dad do?
You're just sitting down.
So that was Barrymore asking this boy, what does your dad do? But obviously this boy's dad was in the audience. So the boy just said, well, he's sitting down. The young boy obviously misunderstood, because Barrymore didn't say, what is your dad doing in this moment? He said, what does your dad do? Meaning for work. But the boy said, he's sitting down.
What's your dad do?
You're just sitting down.
So then Barrymore asks the boy, what does your mum do? Why is she not here? And let's listen to his response.
Why is Mum not sitting beside him?
She's poorly. She's been puking all night.
So the boy actually says she's poorly. She's been puking all night. Now, puking is a funny word to say vomiting.
Why is Mum not sitting beside him?
She's poorly. She's been puking all night.
So this was just one of many shows that Michael Barrymore did in the 90s where, as I mentioned, he was brilliant with that live audience. And now looking at it, I think people loved it because you just never knew what you were going to get because it was all kind of live and you knew he was just reacting to the audience. And this is where he was at the absolute height of his fame. He even had his own catchphrase. So this is a clip again from the interview that was just a few years ago. So we're talking 20, 25, maybe even more years really since Barrymore was really famous. But notice how everyone in the audience still remembers it.
If I said Michael Barrymore and the audience would say, "What?" It's extraordinary.
So notice that the guy doing the interview says Michael Barrymore and the audience says, all right, basically saying all right, but saying it in that kind of working class way. All right? As that is often how he started his shows, but notice how everyone remembers that 20, 25 years later, because it's kind of a working class thing. He was kind of like a working class hero. So as mentioned, life was going great for Michael Barrymore in the mid-90s. However, like many famous people, he had lots of difficulty with drugs and alcohol at this time. And then he went into rehab to try and get help for all of this. And this obviously was big news at the time because of how famous he was. And it was so big that even Princess Diana got involved. Let's hear again a clip from that recent-ish interview.
I want to start with Princess Diana. Weird coincidence, I had lunch with her at Kensington Palace and she mentioned you. And she said, I really feel sorry for Michael Barrymore. You're in all the papers. Very soon afterwards, like within days, you had gone into rehab and she wrote to you.
I thought the head of the rehab was taking the mick. I thought it was a joke.
What did she say to you?
That I hope you get well and I'd love to meet up sometime and get to know you. And, you know, she was no pound shop princess.
No.
You know, she was a class act.
So, as we heard there, Michael Barrymore thought the head of rehab was taking the mick. He thought it was a joke, but it was true. Princess Diana wrote to him. And as Michael Barrymore then said at the end, she was no pound shop princess, meaning a cheap, rubbish one. He said she was a class act. So Michael Barrymore and Princess Diana struck up a friendship, which apparently also caused problems in Michael Barrymore's marriage because he was married at the time. But he remained friends with Princess Diana, maybe because, I don't know this, I'm just completely imagining, but maybe because they were both extremely famous. And I don't know, if you're extremely famous, maybe it's good to talk to someone else that's going through the same thing. I don't know, maybe that's how their friendship started. But around this time, 1995, something shocking happened. Michael Barrymore came out as gay. Okay, which obviously we're talking mid-1990s here, so we're talking more than 30 years ago. So it was a much bigger thing than it is now. And as Michael Barrymore was so famous and newspapers were so big, like it was almost, I suppose, heaven for newspapers because they could sell lots and lots of newspapers. But the way the story came out is actually quite interesting. Now, I knew he came out as gay in the 90s, but I don't remember this specific event. But here again is Michael Barrymore talking about how it actually came out, because he apparently was in a club in East London watching a drag act. Now, if you don't know what a drag act is, it's someone that gets on the stage, like entertainment again. Normally it's a man dressing up as a woman and they kind of make jokes about stereotypes between men and women, basically, because he does mention drag act in this clip. Okay, so here he is talking about the night he came out as gay, which apparently he didn't mean to do. So let's see what happened.
Tell me, did you intend to do that night, or was it...
No, a drag act got up on stage and I wasn't with anyone. I was just sitting there around. I thought I'll get out of the way so in case he sees me. And he went, oh, Christ, have you heard about Barrymore? And they all went, ooh. And he went, he's not here, is he? And I didn't think. I just stepped up on stage and went and started mucking about and started singing New York, New York, tell the world I'm gay. I just made a parody up straight away, not thinking anything of it.
You didn't expect people to write about it or...
No, not at all.
So let's just see what happened there. He was in a club. They said something about Michael Barrymore. I hope he's not here. So Barrymore was, in fact, there. And he got up on stage because, as I mentioned, he was a big, loud personality and started singing New York, New York, tell the world I'm gay. So remember, he is one of the most famous people in the country. And then at the end, the journalist who is interviewing him asks, so you didn't think anyone would write about it? And he actually says no, which is quite strange now, isn't it? Because if that happened now, camera phones would be out and it would be bang everywhere. But this was the mid-90s where that wasn't a possibility. So he genuinely thought that nothing would come of this. But let's see what happened.
Just thought I just got up and I did it for a laugh. Thought no more of it. And then the next day on the newsstand, Barrymore was gay. I went, oh, Christ. That was the first I saw it.
Right. When you saw that banner headline, your wife is also your manager.
Yeah.
And she discovers you've come out. What is her reaction when you...
She lost the plot.
So, a couple of things there. Number one, he found out via the newsstand. I remember even, like, at the petrol station, it would be, like, the headline story would be written on the newsstand where the newspapers were, and I just remember walking past them and seeing stories. I don't remember this specific story breaking. And obviously, as he mentioned, he was married at the time. So then the journalist asked him what his wife said about it, because he was married to a woman, and he said she lost the plot. So obviously went crazy, and if someone like Michael Barrymore, who was having problems with drugs and alcohol anyway, I don't know the specifics, but I doubt that helped a lot. But anyway, if anything, this probably did more to make him even more famous, because even more people were talking about Michael Barrymore after this. And he was so famous that his name entered into British slang, which is still a term used today because, as I said, he was a very loud and big personality. So the term "stop giving it the Barrymore" was born, or even just giving it the Barrymore. Okay, basically meaning giving it the big un. So let me give you an example, a completely made up example. Let's say I walk into a pub and I'm singing as I walk in, and I walk into the pub. I buy everyone a drink, and then I start dancing and talking really loudly. Someone may say, "Look, stop giving it the Barrymore. Stop giving it the big un," like you think you're, really famous, like a big TV personality. And that term still exists today. It's not extremely common. However, if you talk to someone my age or older, working class, like me, I can guarantee you they will know exactly what that means. So anyway, as mentioned, Barrymore's career continued, and then he obviously found out Princess Diana had unfortunately died. And again, we're going to take a clip from this interview, which I think is a kind of small glimpse into Michael Barrymore's quick wit. Okay, so listen to this small part about when he's asked about when Princess Diana died.
When Diana died, where were you? How did you hear?
I was in a gay club. I was in a place called The Fridge.
In Brixton?
Oh, you know it, do you?
Yeah.
So did you notice that? He said, I was in a gay club called The Fridge, and the journalist, let's call him, says, "Oh, what, in Brixton?" And Michael Barrymore instantly responds without even a second's thought, "Oh, you know it, do you?" And then obviously the audience laughed. That was just a very small example of his extreme quick wit and his entertainer side, let's say. So Princess Diana obviously died in 1997, I believe. I didn't actually check that, but I'm pretty sure it was 97. Was it 98? I can't remember. Okay, I have just checked that. It was the 31st of August, 1997. Okay, but as mentioned, Michael Barrymore, if anything, he was just getting more and more famous, but he still had problems with alcohol and drugs. But his career continued until that fateful night in 2002, okay? The night that would instantly end Michael Barrymore's career. Okay, so here he is talking about it.
I mean, talk me through what happened that night. People were drinking, taking drugs?
They're all having drinks. They said, oh, can we go in the jacuzzi? So I said, yeah, I've got to put the lights on because otherwise you won't see where we're going. And then I went out of there and had a joint. And as we walked out, I looked down and there's a steward floating in the pool.
Now, I don't expect you to have understood all of that. I didn't really give you much context, but basically what he said was he was obviously asked what happened that night, and then he said some people were at his house and they asked if they could go into his jacuzzi. He was obviously a very rich man and had a jacuzzi at his house, and then he turned the lights on for them, and then when he went back, I believe he actually said, I went out for a joint, obviously to smoke some drugs. And then the man, Stuart, who unfortunately lost his life that night, was floating in the pool, in the jacuzzi. So floating because he had died. So Michael Barrymore had a small party, let's say, at his house that night. And then a man was found dead at his house. Now, obviously, lots and lots and lots and lots of stories have been written about what happened. And obviously the fact that Michael Barrymore had problems with alcohol and drugs means use your imagination about the type of stories that have come out. And here, in fact, is Michael Barrymore talking about journalists and some of the stories that they have made.
You know, and some of the journalism, you showed one of the headlines there, gay orgy. How do you have a gay orgy with 4 girls and 5 blokes, 3 of them are straight? How do you?
So he was there questioning the fact that people say there was a gay orgy happening. And he's saying, well, how can that happen if there were, I can't remember how many girls he said, and boys, and some were straight. So it must be obviously horrible for this man, because there must be lots of stories being written, and yeah, obviously I don't know anything, so it's not like I'm giving an opinion on this, but I would be surprised if they're all true. In fact, I would say the majority are not true, and he has to read these, and it must be horrible. Now, Michael Barrymore was in fact arrested, but it never went to a trial because there was no evidence. He had alibis that he was in a completely different room and had nothing to do with it. However, obviously, people being people just kind of, you know, they make up their own thing. They think he was famous, a man died, he liked drugs, he liked alcohol, so something must have happened. This is how people think. I'm not saying I think like that. This is kind of what happens though. So he still, to this day, has to fight for his innocence, even though he has clearly been proven innocent. And here he is again talking about that on this recent interview.
I had nothing to do with what happened to Stuart. I am innocent. I am not 99.9% innocent. I am 100% innocent, and I am entitled to walk around with my head held high for the rest of my life.
So there he was saying he is completely 100% innocent. And again, it is sad because we say you're innocent until proven guilty. Michael Barrymore was not proven guilty. He was proven innocent. However, people just don't want to accept it, really. Yes, someone did die at his house. Michael Barrymore says, like, the people that were in the jacuzzi at the time, obviously they were all adults. He expected them to be able to look after themselves, which obviously they did not do. Now, obviously, at any kind of party like this, there was alcohol. I believe they said that the person that died had drugs in his body as well. So, you know, definitely not a good look for Michael Barrymore. And that is probably why he has never been back on TV again. However, a long, long time has passed. And when I watched this interview recently, there were a few moments, as I showed you earlier, where you saw his old charm and his old wit. And then he was asked this question. Well, he was actually asked if he believes he should get another crack at the whip, basically meaning another chance to go back to being on British TV.
Do you feel that you've reached that point when you should just get another crack of the whip from the British public, from the people, from the media, from everybody?
I'd be lying if I didn't say that would be amazing, but Oh, is there much left of this programme?
No, there isn't.
I've enjoyed it. I'll really hold on to it. I mean, it goes a lot deeper than I could even explain to you.
So as you may have noticed there, he got quite emotional even at the thought of that. And clearly, as he said, I think he said, I'd be lying if I didn't say that would be amazing. So he clearly does want to come back on British TV. He has done a few things. He's done like Celebrity Big Brother and the kind of odd show here and there. So when I said at the beginning, he's never been seen on TV again, that is not true. That was just to get you interested, of course. He has done the odd thing. And then like when he did Celebrity Big Brother, for example, that was about 5 years after the scandal. And I think he finished second because he is a really entertaining, funny, nice guy. And then it was like, oh, he's going to come back. But it just didn't work out. Now, I'm not here to judge or anything like that. I'm just here to present the facts of what happened. And that is the story of Mr. Michael Barrymore. So the next time you're talking to someone in the UK, make sure they are older than 35, I would say. And then bring out the name Michael Barrymore, have a chat. Maybe they can tell you some of these stories which the papers have written. I'm sure even some of my friends say, oh, do you know this happened? Because it actually happened in Essex, not far from where I live. So it's always like, oh, my uncle knows someone that was there and all of this rubbish. But it is, in my opinion, an extremely sad story. Number one, obviously, because someone unfortunately lost their life. And number two, because British TV lost one of its absolute superstars. So that is it for this week's Rock and Roll English. I hope you enjoyed it. I will talk to you very soon. But in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.